Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Viola. I am the product marketing manager for our logistics and transportation unit at tomorrow.io. I am here with Joe Lynch, who I'm very excited to have for this session. Joe, if you're able to introduce yourself, just give your background, and the listeners can learn more about you.
Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. My name is Joe Lynch, and I'm with the Logistics of Logistics. I'm a podcaster, which I never thought I'd be saying. If 10 years ago, I would have been like, what is a podcast? But I'm a podcaster. That's my main gig these days. But my background is I'm in the Detroit metro area, and I grew up in automotive, which I always call the biggest, baddest supply chain on earth. So I was an engineer and then a program manager. I spent a lot of time launching cars in China and Thailand throughout the 90s. Got more into the consulting side. Then about 2009, I ended up at a logistics company. Everything was kind of falling apart. Remember back then, the Great Recession. And I thought I'll go to this little logistics company. It was a turnaround. We did great. I was excited. It was a brand new industry for me, although it was kind of close to it in the past. I never really was a logistics guy. And then I always thought I'd go back to automotive. Well, here we are 12 years later, and I'm still in logistics and loving it. And so I'm excited to do what I do, which is normally podcasting on my show. But I'm excited to be on your show for this 1 minute.
Yes, we are too. So, Joe, you had mentioned that you have a background in ops. And so we know that a lot of the focus now has been on improving operations, making things more efficient and effective. And where do you see the biggest opportunities there, or where are you hearing
Right.
that things that people are talking about and looking to
Right.
improve?
Well, if you're anybody who's on an ops team, they always know, whether it's a factory or a store or a carrier, you're always looking and saying, how do we make things, to your point, more efficient, meaning I'm using fewer resources to get it done, and more effective, meaning I'm getting, the desired results more often, right? I think if you look at the trucking business, it's a low margin business, and it's such a difficult business. We have already problems with driver retention. We have problems with keeping those trucks on the road. I mean, these are very expensive rigs, and we already know about infrastructure problems. We know about drivers not staying in the business because it's hard. They're missing time with family. So I could see ops teams saying, I would like to do a better job, and if somebody can point to them a way that they could have fewer accidents, a way for them to say we're going to have fewer weather-related delays. And by the way, when you have fewer weather-related delays, not only you have happier customers, but you also have happier drivers. I can't imagine, like, I'm an okay driver, but I can't imagine what it's like to drive a big rig. Those are enormous, right? But then it starts raining or sleeting, and you're not so sure how long it's going to take you to slow down. And it's not just you driving, it's all us idiot passenger car drivers too. So I could see a lot of operations teams and carriers saying, yeah, this is going to be better for drivers. And by the way, if you're a driver, I think it would mean a lot to me that the company I work for cares enough about me that they're trying to avoid me being in accidents, trying to avoid me being stuck on this, at a rest stop. So I can see this as a big opportunity for operations teams.
Awesome. Are there ways in which you're seeing them already making strides in this area to, minimize disruptions or
Well,
make operations more efficient in general?
well, I mean, there's the visibility stuff that we have going on right now has obviously made it a lot better. Hours of service, the ELD, the electronic logging device, even though it's kind of a pain in the ass, a lot of people didn't want it. Here we are, we have it, and I think we're seeing some benefits from that technology. But I don't think there is anything like an organized application that they're able to do anything with weather. So they're kind of stuck in that mode of saying, and I've done it. I remember when I was still at a logistics company, somebody saying, well, we have this, it can't go above this temperature, was a chemical, but it was moving from down south to up here, and it was up here in the north. And we were just looking at the weather and all the along the route and saying, well, depending what time you pick it up, it looks like it's going to be this temperature. And then you're kind of going, well, in Atlanta, it's this, in Nashville, it's this. It was really just very, first off, it's labor intensive. It's not particularly effective way to do it. So I think to answer your question, I don't think people are doing as much with the weather because they don't really have a tool to do it. I mean, we all have that on our phone. We all look at our phone and say, hey, it looks like it's going to rain today. But that's not a route. If you're talking logistics and supply chain, it's got to be a route.
Yeah, for sure. I know when we had first met, when I had reached out to
Mhm.
you to be on your podcast, because we also were on your podcast,
Yeah.
you had said that surprisingly weather had never come up in your previous conversations. Why do you think that is? And also, is it just because they've thought that it's just something they've had to deal with manually,
Right.
to your point, or and kind of just the cost of doing business, or are there other reasons?
And that's a great question. I think we didn't have visibility solutions until, I don't know, 5-7 years ago. As soon as you see it and you go, oh yeah, that's what I want, right? That's kind of what happens in this business. And yeah, I think as soon as one company sees it and says, yeah, that's what I want, and they start having some better business results. And that's what it comes down to. If I can be more profitable, spend less on insurance, keep my drivers safer, um, and potentially, we talked about before we hit record, we're talking about ozone action days. So many big shippers and big brands are saying, I want to do a better job on sustainability. 80% of greenhouse gases come from supply chains. So everybody's looking at it, and if it's not our customers looking at it, it's going to be the government looking at it. And I could see some companies saying, we'd like to avoid shipping, like to avoid having trucks on the road during greenhouse or during ozone action days, because that's one of our commitments to the planet. I can see
Yeah,
that happening.
we
How do
we
I
just
predict that right now, though?
yeah, it's on record now.
Yeah. I
We
mean, but that's the
recently,
problem. How do I predict that? If I'm the average logistics team, I'm just looking and saying, yeah, it's August. I think we're gonna have ozone action days. That's where it ends. Right? Finding out the day before does me no good.
yeah, for sure. Kind of on that note too, we had a recent conversation where the two is one of the two is highest costs of that trucking companies have is fuel. And we've learned that a lot of companies now will, when they have extreme headwinds, they'll just pull over because they'd rather not burn the fuel there. And so do you kind of
Right.
see then that they would also just, I guess, reroute or plan ahead, because it's kind of doing two things in that point. You're not wasting fuel,
Right.
but you're also, if now they're increasingly focusing on emissions, you're also reducing your emissions for that day.
Right. Yeah, I think will be so many applications just like that. Before we hit record, we were talking about Dean Key. He was on my podcast. He's a truck driver at Ruan. He's been there like 26 years, and he drives a soft-sided truck. And what did he say? Like he was in like Wyoming or the Dakotas. 100-mile-an-hour winds were coming out that way, and he's basically driving a kite. So I could see, as time goes on, data only gets better and better. That's what we all know. So if you could say, over time, I've been using, maybe not even, let's just say I'm using your data and I'm looking at it and I'm comparing to the real world and say, yeah, these are the days that we're more likely to have accidents. And that in reality, that are the days where we have more accidents. These are the days that the app tells me I might have more weather related delays. And sure enough, it's true. And you might get to the place where you say, look, that's an area with super bad weather, maybe sleet or hail or snow. We try to do fewer shipments in February in that region. And we're going to hold a little extra inventory. And here's the cost analysis. It makes sense. You know, because I could see even getting to the place where if you can convince insurance companies look and say, hey, they have fewer accidents, your rates go down.
Absolutely.
So that, and again, I think the data just gets better and better and better over time. That's the nature of all this. As I was saying just before we hit record again, if I could look at your buying data online and say, oh, this is what Brittany bought over the last month, I might be shocked, but no, but that's a lot of money, right? But that is not nearly as useful as 3 years of data. 3 years of data, now you can start making all sorts of recommendations about what
Yeah,
we know. And I could see the same thing happening with this data, that weather data, where you just say, yep, everybody knows that you don't move freight in this region on these days, or you just try and plan around it the best you can. Again, this logistics and transportation is the tail, not the dog. So when somebody makes something and somebody wants to buy it off a shelf, it's got to get moved. But if we can be smarter about avoiding bad weather days, we're all going to be happier.
absolutely. And speaking on the note of data too, what are the other types of data that you're seeing, at least in your conversations or just in your insight in the industry, that are increasingly getting better or
Yeah,
kind of being leveraged as a whole? Just because obviously weather, while important, is just one component. There's tons of other
right,
facets that are involved in the
right.
industry. So just wanted to learn your insight there.
Yep. So I think one of the things we're seeing over time is, you know, at one time we have these transportation management systems, and transportation management systems want to do certain functions well. They want to be able to get you a quote quickly, right? They want to be able to have that capacity. I also want to be able to check and see does that truck driver have the proper credentials to drive? Does that carrier have the, you know, the right safety record? So I want to be able, we've connected all sorts of data sources over time to our TMS, our transportation management systems. And in recent years, we added visibility. And a lot of that visibility things went inside the ELD, the electronic logging device, which became law like 4 or 5 years ago. So the ELD manages or measures your hours of service, make sure the drivers aren't driving too many hours. So that visibility has grown and grown and grown, and it became more and more important. And then we started, after a while, going from visibility when that was going to deliver, but then we got to predicting. So the visibility allowed me to say, okay, it's at this point right now, I think it'll deliver by this time. And we got really good at that. And I could see that, just again, the data just gets better and better. So visibility, super important in the space. Dynamic pricing is coming on now too. So that is like taking all of sorts of inputs, maybe it's from your own systems, and maybe it's from external systems like DAT or FreightWaves, and coming up with the perfect price. And it's AI driven, machine learning or artificial intelligence. And so I could give you a price that is 95% likely that my customer says yes. So there used to be a lot of back and forth where Brittany says, hey, I'd like to move this. And I say, it's $2,800. And then you say, Joe, I just got somebody who said they'll do it for $2,700. Now I'm calling other carriers back and then trying to get them to lower their price. Now we've gotten to a place where that dynamic pricing says, I know what the market is paying for that, and I can make a profit by putting that number in. I can give you a number that is like immediate right now. So dynamic pricing is a big deal right now. And I can see, again, I honestly, not just saying this because I'm on ClimaCon, that I could see like Tomorrow IO being one of those apps that is just going to be part of your suite of tools that you need it. You need it connected to your TMS.
Awesome. I know you had just mentioned a few really great technological innovations, but are there any other killer apps that have come on the scene recently? I know you speak to a lot of technology companies that are really making strides on revolutionizing the industry. So, if
Yep.
there are any others, would love to hear.
Yeah, well, I think that Green Screens does dynamic pricing. So that was one of the people I just talked to, Don Salvucci, Favier on that. On the past, I've talked to the guys over at Pros, Zeke Ziliak, and so they do a good job. Um, yeah, so I think Project 44 is everywhere now. So their visibility tool, what Jet McCandless and his team have been able to done, I think they're like valued at $2.5 billion, but it's just seen as such a value. Tive, TIVE,
Mhm.
they have like a sensor that's the size of a deck of cards you can put in on a pallet and measure not only where that you can track not only where that truck is, but what the temperature is of that truck and also vibrations, whether that pallet was dropped, humidity, and it just gets better and better and better. So we're expecting more and more information about that truck as it rolls down the highway. And I think we're just going to see, we want to control it. That's what ops people do, right? They want control, they want predictability, and obviously they want safe, and they want less expensive. So anything they can make that work, we're in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I was just listening to another one of your podcasts where I forget who the speaker was, but you both were saying how I feel like we're just on the brink of the kind of technology revolution in this industry. And it's really going to be interesting to see what comes moving
Yeah,
forward as well.
yeah. The tendency is to think that when you have like a cool new technology, that's it. Like, yep, we have this cool thing, but what we're finding out more and more is that technology doesn't stop, right? So the guys, they think about Google. When it started off, you're like, yeah, I guess it's pretty good at searching for stuff on the internet. But so was Jeeves, and so was Yahoo, and all the other the other search engines. All of a sudden went to the wayside, and then Google just starts growing based on their data. And let's face it, that's what we're all looking for: better data, so make better decisions.
Awesome. What do you see also as kind of, because as you were saying, things explode, right? So how do you view then the technologies that truly do make a competitive advantage and can be adopted at scale? What are kind of what's the profile for that, if you will? It's probably not a great
Right. Well,
or-
I think obviously has to have some value to the end customer. So when I say like the next killer app, I'm thinking of like freight brokers and third-party logistics companies. They don't necessarily own trucks, and they start to look all the same. And so they say when they call a carrier, or when they call a carrier, that's one of their customers, and they call a shipper, they don't have a lot to say that um, it makes them any different or better than the next guy. So I think that competitive advantage, or the drive for competitive advantage, is that profile. So you've got to be able to make the case that this is actually some value, right? So you can't call the carrier and go, "Hey, we do this for you," and they go, "So what?" Right? Can't call a shipper and give them a whole bunch of um, stuff they don't care about. I think, this potentially has this weather intelligence has the profile, if you ask me, to be that next killer app, because I think there's savings associated with. I think there's safety associated with. So why wouldn't we do it? And again,
great.
I don't. We won't always be able to kind of change everything, because logistics really supports, you know, manufacturing, and it supports the retail people, or the home delivery. But if you could go back to your shippers and say, "Hey, we would like to make the following modifications, and it's going to reduce delays, and potentially make us a better fleet," I think you're going to see people doing it. And but I'd love to see like as soon as a big carrier picks it up, or a big freight broker picks it up, everybody else picks it up.
Yeah. Could you speak a little bit more about kind of what then the benefit would be if they were, say, if a big carrier did adopt our technology in addition to all the other things that they're doing, what is the benefit, and also what is kind of the potential challenges if they don't adopt this type of technology, but also others?
Well, I think the first thing is, they want to be able to save money. This is again low margin business. So if they can say to the if the operations people say, look, we have this tool that allows us to avoid having all of our trucks on the road in bad weather. Maybe you're still gonna have to move your trucks that week, but maybe you say we pulled it up to Wednesday rather than moving on Thursday because Thursday is when we had a weather event. And if you're able to over time show fewer accidents, that's a huge win. We're trying, the industry as a whole, but also every individual company is trying to reduce accidents. And I think, potentially that's also, again, a morale thing. You're able to say to your drivers, look, we don't want you involved in accidents. We got a truck that's maintained well and it's new and it's got all the right equipment on it for safety. And in addition, we aren't putting you on the road in bad weather. Our goal is not to have you ever pull off to the side of the road again. I think that's a draw. And again, getting drivers is a huge issue these days, and keeping them is a huge issue. So I see some companies wanting to do that. And again, I will throw this out there. The first person that does it, maybe they got to explain and educate the shippers about why this is a great deal. And then at some point, if you're the guys who don't adopt it, you're going to be the ones who have higher insurance costs, which means you're going to have higher turnover of drivers, and probably a dozen other things that are negative to your business. And you're going to say, we're less competitive, right? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, exactly. So as a recap, then it's, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's kind of a few things then. It's both potentially has the benefit of improving their operating margins, given it's already a low margin business.
Right.
Also adds differentiation in the marketplace to their own customers, which, because you said as a 3PL, they kind of all look the same. But if you are able to show that you have this differentiation, and it kind of can potentially just be another revenue stream, or also an opportunity for you to attract and retain your current customers. And then also as a source of keeping your drivers and crew safe, and being able to both recruit and retain drivers, given the tremendous challenge it's been as of late.
Yeah. And again, as I said before, that this data only gets better, in over time. If somebody's able to say these were the initial benefits of it, but over time we just got better and better and better. And we have weather data for years, but who collects that? Who knows what that is, right? That's the crazy thing about data. Somebody has it. It just doesn't. It's not a route format like you guys put it into, but it's just it's out there, and we consider that the environment we live in, and we can't adjust around it. It's unpredictable. Well, I'm in Michigan. It always feels like our weather you can't predict all winter long. Or we had for like 2 weeks where they're telling us this huge storm is coming. Huge storm. It was like 4 inches. And I keep thinking, all these years later, we can't do a good job on some of that. So I think, if we could go back and look at data over time and say, yeah, we know how to predict a little better. And that's what we're all looking to do, is make better decisions. I mean, that's what you want. We want, it's funny. I heard somebody say this the other day, and I think this is so true. We've been told this is the information age. For how long now? 20 years, which is great. But somebody said we're getting past the information age. We're getting to the age of curation. And that means give me the information that I need to make better decisions. Don't fill me up with thousands of data sets that I have to somehow analyze. I'm not that smart. Tell me what days I should be moving my trucks this week. That's what I want. Recommendations.
Exactly. Because a 40% chance of snow in one location doesn't
Right,
really give you much information, as opposed
right,
to it's going to be extreme rain and heavy um, or high winds at this point in
right.
time on this route.
Yeah,
Reduce speeds or pull over if necessary, depending on if it's an empty trailer or if it's filled with cargo.
yeah. I keep thinking I want red, green, yellow on everything in my biz, right? Just tell me when I hit yellow, help me avoid hitting red.
Well, thanks, Joe. Is there anything else you wanted to add, though? Or are there any upcoming events or interviews you want to tell our viewers that, to be on the lookout for?
Um, well, I would say I'll be at Manifest. I know you guys were at Manifest last year, and I look forward to seeing you guys. That's in January. Actually, I normally don't plan that far ahead, but um, uh, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited with what's going on in this industry in terms of technology. For a long time, trucking, warehousing, all these industries were looked at kind of as um, just boring businesses. Nothing. They certainly weren't tech-oriented companies. Now you look at e-commerce has driven e-commerce fulfillment into a high-tech space. Somebody made the point the other day. They said, the ultimate technology in this business is the truck. Stop looking past that. But all of a sudden, I interview them on my podcast all the time. We have so many things going on with autonomous trucking, with electric vehicles, all the technology solutions that are just allow us to make better and better decisions. And obviously, we're all in the headlines this last year. Everyone learned what a supply chain is um, because of COVID. And
They
we
couldn't get their stuff.
Right. When you don't get your stuff, then you start learning about supply chain. But I think in a lot of ways, the industry came into its own. And I think it's because of the adoption of this technologies like this. Visibility probably didn't mean anything 10, 15 years ago. Dynamic pricing wasn't even possible 10 or 15 years ago because we weren't using technology enough.
Yeah.
So
And not so long ago, they even had the on-premise data sources or
the servers, yeah.
yeah, the
Well,
servers.
if you adopted if you added a transportation management system 25 years ago, it was on a server. And a lot of those guys, they were early adopters because they were moving tens of millions of dollars worth of freight every year. Those companies, a lot of them still have, they're not in the cloud. They are in the server next to, in the hallway. So yeah, we're growing up fast in this business.
And why is that though? Why do you think that they're still kind of 30, 20 years behind? Are they
Well,
just
I
unwilling
wouldn't.
to make the change, or it's a
Well,
large investment?
I've always said it's when technology first came around, and I'm old enough to remember, um, I had a computer on my desk that was not wired to anything. And then at some point, they wired it to the rest of the people in the building, and it was like, wow, so we can all send each other messages here. And that seemed like that's pretty cool. Wiring four walls is a lot easier than wiring a supply chain that stretches to China, to India, to Mexico. So I think the technology finally caught up because it was the biggest challenge. And then the idea that you could somehow wire a vehicle, the Internet of Things, now we hear it all the time, but that was not, you couldn't get a vehicle that had internet 10 years ago. And now it just seems like I think it's standard in all new cars. So um, we've just, I guess the technology enabled us to do it. As soon as we could do it, we wanted to do it.
Thanks, Joe, for such an insightful session. I'm very excited to turn it over to Dan by introducing our ESG and Climate Adaptation Award winner for the logistics industry. Dan, over to you.
Thanks, Britt, and that was a terrific session. The winner of our ESG and Climate Adaptation Award within the logistics industry is Carvana.